and I don't think it's likely, but there's an attack that's going on right now, and it's Pakistan. Pakistan is another Muslim country with 160 million people, and they have nuclear weapons, and they have the means to deliver them. Now, back last summer in Chicago, there was a debate among the Democratic candidates, and Obama came out and said, I want to have the unilateral U.S. bombing of northwest Pakistan. Mrs. Clinton said, no, you don't want to do that. McCain said no. Even Bush said no. And now the U.S. is doing what Obama demanded. The U.S. is bombing northwest Pakistan, and indeed, the U.S. and NATO troops and the Afghan troops are preparing to invade Pakistan across the Afghan border. Now, why are they doing that? This is the one part of the world where they still talk about bin Laden, Al-Qaeda, the war on terror, all of this idiotic mythology. Why are they doing it? They want to destroy the Pakistani central government. You probably saw the statement the other night from the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Gilani. He says, our national honor and sovereignty does not allow foreign troops to come into our country. And he's absolutely right. But the US and NATO are now going to do that under the new policy. The goal is to destroy Pakistan. You see Iraq now carved into 3 parts. Pakistan will be into 4 or 5 parts. It'll be Sindh, Pashtunistan, Baluchistan, Waziristan, and on, and that will never end. That's the goal. Now, why are they doing that? Not so much because it's an Islamic country, although that does figure in, mainly because it's a potential ally of China. It's traditionally friendly to China, and under conditions of world crisis, Pakistan would tend to gravitate back towards China. So look at our hit list now. We've got not Iran on the hit list anymore. Iran is now a candidate to be played against Russia, but the hit list is now Sudan and Pakistan. So that's the change. And Obama is the one who demanded the attacks on Pakistan when everybody else said no. So McCain, ironically, was a better friend of the Muslims than Obama was, because McCain said, I talked to General Musharraf about these things. I don't do it unilaterally. And Obama said, no, it's got to be unilateral. That's the Brzezinski policy. That's what, of course, Obama has no idea. Obama doesn't even know where Pakistan is. So he's spouting the line that Brzezinski gave him. Brzezinski's argument to the NeoCons is to say to the NeoCons, you're fools, you're bunglers, you're so obsessed with Israel and the Persian Gulf and Iraq and Iran that you've lost the big picture. And the real power in the world, of course, is Russia, China. Those are countries that are seriously capable of resisting the US and the British, and you've got to focus on them. And India, of course, would then become a big asset in that regard. Japan is another one. There's just been a summit of Japan and China. And the big question, of course, there was, would Japan become a staging area for the kinds of destabilizations of China that Brzezinski is planning? So the Japanese government, fortunately, has said no. The Japanese defense minister said that chaos in China would be the worst possible outcome for the interests of Japan. So it looks like Japan is saying no. Looks like Taiwan is saying no. They voted for the more reasonable party, the non-independence party that wants to have good relations with the mainland of China. The old KMT is now back in power. So everybody in the world is now in the process of choosing sides. Now, the point of having Obama is you've got the same old imperialism, and you're going to give it a facelift. You're going to give it cosmetic surgery. And one goal is to have that face for Africa. Let me just do Africa for a second. The goal in the case of Africa is to kick the Chinese out. It's to deprive China of the oil. We've seen it with Sudan. Oil, raw materials, minerals, and other things that they get from China. Ultimately, Brzezinski would like to isolate China, encircle it, and then reach a point where China would have nowhere to turn for oil except the Russian oil wells in eastern Siberia. In other words, the end product of this entire policy is to play China against Russia and get rid of both of them, destroy both, and then the US and the British can settle in for another 100 years of world domination. Now, there's also an angle for Europe, though. The idea, of course, is that with Bush or McCain, the US is disliked, the policy is discredited, nobody wants to go along with this. The demagogy of Obama is that with this new face, somehow you can now get throngs and throngs of young dupes and individuals who have really no clue what they're doing to support this stuff. In other words, Obama wants Europe as a tool against Russia. And I would urge you, don't go there. Realize that that is what you're being offered, and don't do it. And if Obama comes from London to Paris to Berlin, it would be important for people to go out there and say, well, or not to go out there, say, we don't want any part of this. This is the policy that Brzezinski's been following. NATO expansion, far beyond the lines that were agreed on back in 1990 and 1991. You may remember there was an agreement that said the US would not even go into East Germany. And now we're all the way to Lithuania and Georgia and Ukraine and all these places. Now, what we're headed into is a Polish missile crisis. You had the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. That was bad enough. The Polish missile crisis is going to be worse because there are elements in Poland, there are elements in the Czech Republic. There's even an element in Lithuania. There's a forward tentacle of that system in Lithuania, right on Russia's doorstep. What is the goal of that? It is the ability to have a first strike, surprise attack, to destroy the Russian nuclear deterrent on the ground, and then the second strike launched by the Russians can somehow be suppressed by these missiles in Poland. So it is a step towards World War III. And it is Brzezinski, another angle that goes with it, the independence of Kosovo, under what amounts to a criminal organization, in my view, is another one of Brzezinski's projects. And this, of course, is designed as an affront to Russia. Today we have the indictment of the capture of this guy, Karadzic. Karadzic is a very bad guy, but why now? And what's the goal? This is designed to further inflame relations with Russia, even as a possibility of war between Russia and Georgia comes on the horizon. So this is now a full strategic envelopment. This is not just Iraq and the Persian Gulf. This is now a worldwide strategy. And again, the mind of it is Brzezinski. This is already being implemented in the United States. I better point that out too. You think you see Bush and Cheney as the leaders of the United States. They're not. They're gone. They're finished. Not even lame ducks. They're the janitors of the White House, the groundskeepers. They're there for show. They're just figureheads to make people think that normal stuff is still going on. Power has now passed into something called the Principals Committee. And it's just the leading government ministers, the secretaries of the main executive departments, an interministerial committee, if you will. Rice of the State Department, Gates of the Pentagon, Paulson of the Treasury. Admiral Mullen of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is a very important guy also in this. But these people are bureaucrats. They don't really have policies. The policies that they're carrying out are from Brzezinski, and that is no attack on Iran, make a deal with North Korea. And Cheney was horrified by that. Cheney almost had his 99th heart attack over the deal with North Korea, and this was done by Rice. But attack Pakistan, get ready to attack Sudan, get ready to attack Zimbabwe, get ready to attack Burma. In many cases, it's done under humanitarian considerations. It's not bin Laden al-Qaeda. Pakistan is the exception. But in most of these places, like Sudan or Zimbabwe, it's human rights. Goes back to Carter, right? Goes back to the time when Brzezinski was running the National Security Council. So what you've got is a shift. Instead of having imperialism with right-wing slogans, you've got imperialism with left-wing slogans. But the content is either the same or, I would argue, worse, because the NeoCons had one benefit. They picked on relatively defenseless states. In other words, everybody knew there was no way that Iraq could strike the United States directly. It's not even easy to see how Iran could strike the US directly. But when you get to Russia and China, that looks very different, doesn't it? Because now there are intercontinental ballistic missiles and H-bombs, and they can defend themselves, and they will. So the NeoCon game is over, but you can see that at least they had some limits to their insanity, whereas with Brzezinski, the insanity is essentially unlimited.